How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video. And today, guys, what to bring to you is an updated guide to hand traps. Today, we're going to talk about which ones are the best, which ones are the worst, and are some really underrated right now, because I feel like some really are, and that's something that we really have to talk about, especially with all these events that are popping up now and all the IRL events, which is just so amazing to see, right? I'm going to Kentucky this weekend for the PPG, which is my first big event since COVID. So if you are going to be there, definitely come up to me and say hello. I'm really excited to meet as many of you as possible. We're going to be going over my list at the end of the video today and whatever changes that I might make before the event as well. And just talk about like all my findings that I've had in testing, because I've had my head just down in testing for the past month. Like every single day, just played like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 games, just making sure that I'm keen on rulings, that I know how the deck works, making sure that my tech cards are working. So we'll go through that at the end of the video as well. But I do want to go over each hand trap individually today and just talk about why they're good or why they're not, and why I would consider not playing them or playing them. We're also going to be talking about correct ratios, and I'll show you my ratios that I'm playing in my striker list as well. So I do hope that this video does help you, because there is a lot of value in videos like this that can really show you a different viewpoint and different ways to hand trap the format. Whereas we talked about it before, but this just goes a little bit more in depth, in my opinion, as to right now, because right now has been such a difference in the format, right? Because the arc of the format has changed already like 4 times. So I want to make sure that everyone is ready to go for any event that you may go to. The first thing I want to talk about today, though, is tomorrow, Friday, the April 1st, yeah. So this is going to be the mat drop for the new striker mat, and if you use code GGYGO10 on the Imperium Duelist website, I would really appreciate it. It really does directly help the channel, so thank you all so much. The single cloth mat will be 40, the double cloth mat will be 60. This is a limited run, so definitely make sure that you go ahead and get yours. It's going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. PST, so this is going to be on Friday. I'm recording it on Thursday, so there you go. But I do hope that you all enjoy this mat. This has zones and no zones, so you can get it either way. I'm very excited for this mat. It looks so beautiful, and a big shout outs to Midnight Dreams again for being able to put this together. You just did such a phenomenal job. So I do hope that you all enjoy the mat, because it is just such a beautiful piece of art. So without further ado, let's hop right into our hand trap video today and talk about why they are good or bad. But I want to start off just kind of talking about the bad. So in my opinion, you might be shocked about Valor, right? But it's paired in my head with like Meister in a way. So with Meister, I feel like this one just really dropped out of the format. This is just something that just hasn't really found a use. It's pretty good against like certain matchups, even like PK or whatnot, right? But this isn't like a card that completely stops combo. Like it's something that will stop like a Scythe or whatnot, but it's not as generic as you'd want it to be, because cards like Bell just outshine this immensely, and we'll talk about that. But like Meister, it just doesn't really do that much right now, and it's not like one of the 2 hand traps that would really just like end a turn, right? And that's how I feel about like Valor right now. Like Valor, you have to have something to pair it to for it to actually be like super relevant, right? I feel like Valor is really cool because effect negation right now is really strong, but it's also just not as good as Imperm, because if you have Valor on your turn and you're trying to crack a board, it just doesn't really do anything, and it's also a terrible top deck, whereas Imperm is just way better. So in my opinion, unless you're playing like Hulk Celine package, or like a means to really need like a Valor, right? I don't really love running Valor. I feel like there's just way better hand traps to be running right now, because like the ideology when Valor was like back in the meta was talking about how it like beats based, because they're gonna put up Baron and then you want to stop for like the Hulk or like the Auroradon. But cards like the Bell or like the Ash that are way more generic right now, especially against like even the Bell, and again we'll talk about that, but like Valor, it just doesn't do enough for me, right? Especially the fact that it's not in both turns. I don't love this option. Especially since there's so many Fluanderese players too, that like Valor is just so easily dodged by that deck. There's just a lot of things that I'm just not a huge fan of with that. So definitely go ahead and playtest without it and just see if it really comes up, because I feel like a lot of people are tunneling on Valor right now. Is like, you have to play Valor, but I really just don't think that it's that strong currently. Same with Meister. There is something that I left unpictured here, and this is going to be Nibiru. So Nibiru is something that is really strong against her rogue matchups, and I didn't really want to include it in this because it's not bad, but it's also not the best in my opinion, because it doesn't trade well at the moment. Because like if you're using it as a means to stop the Brave Tenny board or like based, the only thing you're really doing is trading it out with like a Baron. So I mean that's great, especially in my head right now, right? Like I'm playing Striker, and when they go full combo, they have a Yazi in the graveyard. So like let's say like you Nibiru them, right? And then they go Baron Negate, and then they go Standby Phase, and then they go Baron Effect, summon Yazi, and then you're just staring at the Yazi like, wow, that's really hard to out. You know, it's kind of something that I don't really feel like it does too much. Nibiru is fantastic against any follow-up and any board that's not going into the Omni, so usually that's always just the follow-up and any rogue strategies, which is great. But again, I just don't really love Nibiru right now for what it is. I feel like, again, there's just way better hand traps, and we'll talk about those as we move forward here. So the next setup is Crow and Lancia. So Crow, I feel like, has its uses, right? Like you can attempt to like banish a Scythe, you can attempt to banish like a Celestial, a DPE, which are all very relevant in the format at the moment. You can use it to like banish a Ray, banish like the desk bot. Like there's a couple things that you can really do with Crow. I just feel like it's not that great against every matchup, and I try to go for the most generic ones at the better part of like the top of my hand trap list, because cards like this are really solid, and like when they're amazing in the format, like they're insane, right? Like they're the best hand trap. Like when Crow is like great, it's insane. Same with Lancia. When it's great, it's insane. But like right now, we're seeing a hint of Dino FTK. If you haven't heard about that, it's kind of a thing now. Like people are actually trying to build Dino FTK. So this is where Lancia is just cracked. But like, I don't really love Lancia either, because a lot of the PK decks are actually starting to play a ton of extenders. So they still end on like DPE Fogblade. And there's still a lot of opportunity for them to play. I've said this in a video before where Lancia is like really great against like follow-up. And this is where I was talking about with like Dragon Link, right? Like if you have Lancia against specifically their follow-up, it's game ending. Like they can't play. Having it initially, they can still go like Seal's Pass or like Seals and a Handtrap, or maybe even if they have like the Boot Tracer, then they go and like Seal Savage, right? So it's not something that's that crazy. Like you can use it against like the Brave Tenny deck, but since they have the Brave cards and they have the Hulk access and Auroradon, like you're essentially just stopping extension with the Lancia combo versus like the main combo of it. And I feel like it's just kind of a waste of a hand trap where you can actually hit them at a more intricate spot than just doing a blanket effect like a Lancia, right? Now, Lancia is really good in its own respect against decks like Flunder, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, it's still really solid, but I just feel like there are better things at the current moment to run over something like a Lancia. Now, let's get out of what I would deem not as great right now. Not particularly bad, but just not as great. So, moving into my first one here is Imperm. These go in order, by the way, in the terms of how I feel about them. So Imperm, it's really solid because, again, like you can top deck it and it can still trade with like a Baron, and then you can go ahead and like deal with that Baron and like kill the board. And especially like just coming from like my striker mind, right? That's something where I value a lot, because if I can go ahead and just like deal with the Baron rather than watch it get put back to the extra deck, that's something that I potentially have the ability to reborn with something like a Shark Cannon if I don't have any other ways to like put up a negate, right? Like if I don't have an anchor against like Brave Tenny, I'm always just summoning back their Baron in the end phase with the Shark Cannon. And that's just an amazing Omni negate to have, right? And then if it stays alive, then you have a free pop. So that's something that I would really consider. Imperm, I've seen some people try to cut it too. Like even in a lot of like the Plunder Patrol decks, you'll see this card get cut a lot too. It's something that I really do love, and it's just a great card. Again, it just doesn't trade the best right now. It's still really solid, but like not every Sword Soul deck cut Circle, which makes Imperm not as great. If you're playing against Flow Under Reeves, they have Book of Moon and Advent, which makes Imperm not as great. If they have like the Brave combo, you have to have something else that's actually going to be able to be paired with the Imperm to make it even worthwhile. So I'm not saying that this one's bad. It's actually like about mid-tier for me. It's still pretty good, but it's not like my favorite right now. The fact that you can still like set it into a like Floodgate column too is still really nice, but there's just not really that many Floodgates going around right now too, right? So it's kind of like a yes and a no card. Still pretty mid, but I think that it's okay at best. Ash. I like Ash right now. I think Ash is very generic. I think it's very good. It hits a lot of the rogue decks. It hits almost all the meta decks for the most part. Because, like, even when they go, like, Red Rose, Summon Baron, and then they go Red Rose Effect, if you Ash that, like, they have to negate that with Baron, right? And that's something, too, where I do like that interaction, because, like, Ash isn't really good elsewhere in that matchup, right? I like Ash more than a card like, say, Valier, because I feel like Ash is just way more generic, like hitting all the pot cards, hitting the Celestial draw, in like the Mirror match, hitting the Fusion Destiny. Like, it just is such a more broad card that I feel like this is just a mandatory 3 of no matter what deck you're playing, to go ahead and try to stop a lot of the shenanigans that are going on right now. And again, it just stops so much that, like, there's no point to just not play this, right? So I think this is definitely insane, but I do feel like there are a couple hand traps right now that are just really the best hand traps that we have in the game currently. So again, Ash, very generic, would still play it at 3 all the time. Ghost Ogre. Now, this is a card that you'll usually just see me play at 2, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, per se. Like, Ghost Ogre at 2 is fine, because at that point, it gives you room to play, like, other hand traps. But I think that Ghost Ogre is just phenomenal. And I've actually talked about this, if you go back in my previous videos, like, months back. I was calling this when, like, Brave format was going to be a thing. I was like, dude, Ogre is going to be crazy. It's going to be nuts. And now it's just, like, 2 or 3 in every deck, right? And the reason being, if you're not familiar, is like hitting like the Fateful Adventure against Dragon. A lot of the Adventurer Dragon builds are relying so heavily on Boot Sector right now that if you Ogre Boot Sector, it's a wrap. Like, it's actually just crazy. I really do love hitting the Boot and even the Pure variant, right? Like, it's still insane. There's just so many different cards right now that you can Ghost Ogre that it just becomes so detrimental, right? Even the Flow Underrees map, like, there's just so much opportunity against Sword Soul, even like when they go normal summon or reveal summon token and you Ogre their normal summon, equally insane. A lot of very good opportunity for that. So I was even watching like the IDS matchup too, right? And they use like Schism. If you don't already have like the Bell, you can go ahead when they activate the on-field effect of Schism to then go ahead and Ogre that too. Against D hitting the contract with the gate to make the Mocking X just not work anymore, because at that point, like, they need a contract to use the effect, and if they don't have that, then they just lose. So I think that's really cool, and it just has such good utility, this format. It's actually insane. So whether you're playing it at 2 or 3, this card needs to be in your main deck somewhere, somehow. It needs to be there. But my all-time favorite hand trap this format, which I think was just pushed under the rug after it was the best hand trap and forgotten about, and a lot of people, they like cite it, but they don't ever talk about it in the main, and the only one that I ever see maining it right now is like based, definitely has to go to Ghost Bell. Ghost Bell, I'm just going to say it right now, all right? I'm going to say it right now. One of the best hand traps we have this format. This card is so generic. This is one of the most generic hand traps that we have right now. And this is something that was completely forgot about. And let me just talk about this for a second, all right? Bell hits the Enchantress in the Dragon matchup and now hits the Zombie Vampire. In every deck, it hits Dark. Against Based, it hits Basil Rose Shoot, and it hits the Despot. Like, it hits Stree and Fluunderies, and it's another card that they can't Advent or book in, like, dodge. So, like, it just ends their turn unless they have map. Like, Bell is just so crazy, and I would main this card 100% because the 2 best decks right now are Dragon Link and Prank Kid, and Bell absolutely shuts out Prank Kid. And I love that for this card, and especially with, like, IDS, it kind of, like, hits here and there, right? But, like, this card is literally the best thing to run against IDS. Like, you'll see IDS here and there, but it's not too popular, and it's still something that having this card around literally makes so many matchups so free, and nobody expects Bell because nobody, like, they all think that it's on the sideboard, right? Even against Striker, you can hit Kagari effect, right? In every matchup, there's at least one thing that you can hit. And even with Eldritch starting to be, like, kind of a thing again, this is a card that you can easily just go ahead and hit Sanguines again, right? Or Haqueras. There's so many, like, opportunities this format to be able to use Ghost Bell and make it really worthwhile. So I think that this is a card that was just heavily underrated, and it needs to go back in the main deck because it's just too good not to run right now. Especially against, like, the amount of dark in the game right now, the amount of DP in the game, scythe blocking, like it's just such a good card right now. So going into what my build looks like currently, you'll see I'm maining triple Ash, triple Imperm, double Ogre, and double Bell. I'm maining 10 hand traps. I don't really particularly love drawing into too many hand traps, so I want to make sure that I have like my setup right and I have enough spells to be able to break a board, because Striker works differently. You don't need 2 hand traps. You need like a hand trap and like a Regeki, a hand trap and a burner. Like it just works way differently than like your typical deck, or like PK, right? They can go like double hand trap and they can Zeus. So you just need your own way in your deck to be able to board clear, or to be able to at least break down a board to its simplified game state, right? So with this build, you'll see that I'm actually running set rotation terraforming triple mine. I played over the past like 2 weeks, easy 40 games. And it's something that Mystic Mine came up and won a ridiculous amount of game ones. And that's because if you're playing as Fluendaries and you have Mine, they lose. Because if you get rid of their map, like, or not their map, sorry, their unexplored wins, they have no out. Like, they don't play an out to that card. They cannot get around Mine. And we all know how annoying Fluendaries can get, right? If you clear their wins and you mine them, game 1, they auto-lose. Against Based, a lot of people will throw away their Draco back when they're comboing, but if they don't, and if they keep it in their hand, and you have Mine, if you can break their board and just play like a turn or two, you'll watch them use their Draco back to try to out your board. If you live, though, whether it be through like a Nibiru or like your hand traps that you have, or like your interruption, once that Draco back is gone and you mine them, they no longer have an out in their deck. So like even like the late game mine, like top decking it, insane. There's so many decks right now. Most Sword Soul lists, like the Brave Tenny, don't play the circle. So at that point too, they can't even clear their own monster. So if you don't put another card on the board, they can't hit Blackout either. So I think that's really crazy. We always side out the Mine package, though, for the triple Dark Ruler and then whatever hand trap we need. I'm actually really enjoying the Kaiju right now, because like when I'm siding out the entire package, if I ever need to leave in terraforming because there's not enough for me to side in, then I'll just leave it. But for the most part, I'll side in like triple Dark Ruler and 2 Kaiju, because at that point you're at least like Kaijuing like a DP, right? And that's just something that you just no longer have to worry about. Because like if you open up the burner just to get off the field, now you're just like opening up a Kaiju, right? And just slapping it on the board. You have a card that like the Cooks, the Dragoon. The only thing that I'm really considering in my sideboard right now that really might be a thing now is There Can Be Only One. I think that's really smart currently, because like even going second against Fluendaries, I kind of want to put that card in just to make sure that they don't have a grind game with me. Because other than that, like they can't really play the game. Because like I'm pretty sure the wins like it doesn't even matter there, because at that point, right? Like, they can't even attempt to summon, so, like, There Can Be Only One just shuts them out completely. Unless they actually are siding in the back row out to be able to clear. But it's really funny, too. Mystic Mine, like, if you play it game 1, right, a lot of these decks that don't even want to sideboard, like, back row out against you, because, like, Striker hasn't really had, like, too much back row lately, or, like, insane floodgates, right? So, you force them to put in a lot of back row out because of Mine. And then game 2 and 3, when you're on Dark Ruler and cards that just snap their board, you just keep setting like one card. Like, you don't overcommit your back row, because you already know that they're going to be on like Twin and whatnot and like Lightning Storm. So you just like mine them game 1, win, go game 2, put in your board breaks, and just break their board and set 1. Because at that point, like, you hold so much advantage in hand traps that they sided in all these back routes to be able to clear off, and then they don't open enough combo. So I think that's hilarious in its own right, because like at that point you're just playing mind games with your opponent. Because you're not going to put in game 2 and 3, like you're not going to put in Mine, because it's just not relevant anymore, right? Like they know about it, because like you can't do it again, right? If you can do it again, then your opponent should have put in back row out, but at that point it's usually just not happening. But other than that, I do feel like it's a very strong list here, especially with Bell in the main. Prankade is your literal worst matchup, so it's just something that you really want to have in your main to be able to mitigate that, especially since it's so generic in the format, right? So I do hope this video did help you guys. I do want to just announce that I just hit top 10% on MetaFi. This is insane. I love all of you for all the sessions, and I hope that it's really helping you out in the game. So if you do want a session, definitely go over to my MetaFi page, check me out, and if there's something that you want to talk about for a session, definitely PM me on Discord and we'll talk about that. Go ahead and follow my Twitch, my Twitter, and then join my Discord and join the community. I hope that you all have a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you all so very much.